This is the Israel Allies Foundation, two persons who represent this very important, also political organization. The first is Josh Reinstein. You are from Jerusalem.
Yes, I'm the president of the Israel Allies Foundation, and the Israel Allies Foundation was started as a result of the creation in the Knesset, Israel's parliament, of the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus. In 2006, during the Second Lebanese War, Congress in Washington, D.C. wanted to show support for Israel, so they started our first sister caucus, the Congressional Israelis Caucus. Tomorrow in the Parliament of Austria, we'll be launching our 56th caucus. It's a network of about 1,500 legislators in 56 countries, and what we do is faith-based diplomacy. We take biblical support for Israel and turn it into real political action.
Faith-based diplomacy, this is also something that's very much needed in Europe. Leo van Doeburg from Netherlands, you are the European director of the Allies for Israel. We'll have something to celebrate tomorrow.
Yes, because as what Josh said, tomorrow the 22nd caucus in Europe will be launched and the 56th caucus worldwide. And faith-based diplomacy is very important because the support of Israel is not just like, okay, we will support Israel because the country is great and they have a lot of advantages and to have to develop the relations, but the faith-based diplomacy goes deeper. It is actually the belief in the fulfillment of the biblical promises and prophecies of the return of the Jews to their homeland Israel. And it's good to see that this network is growing worldwide and also in Europe as well. So tomorrow is actually a big celebration because then in the Austrian Parliament we will launch the 22nd caucus.
And of course we will also report about this, but today is still the evening before. You spoke about the spiritual dimension, you spoke about the political dimension. How does this go together?
Well, it works hand in hand. We live in a time where if you don't understand the Bible, you can't understand the newspaper. We're seeing the fulfillment of biblical prophecy from the ingathering of the exiles from the north and the south and the east and the west, coming back on the wings of eagles, or airplanes as we call them today, to the development of the Negev and the deserts. We're seeing the deserts bloom. We're seeing Israel become a light unto the nations through our technology. So we are seeing the fulfillment of prophecy, and we see it every day in Israel. And so you can't be politically correct when talking about Israel. You have to be biblically correct. And that's why today faith-based diplomacy is really the most important weapon that Israel has in its diplomatic arsenals. It's the reason we have embassies in Jerusalem again. It's the reason we have anti-BDS and anti-Semitism legislation around the world. It's even the reason we have observer status in the African Union. It's because people of faith have gotten off the sidelines and gotten involved with supporting Israel in a real and powerful way.
Now in Christian circles there are also quite different opinions. One would often be asked, what about Gaza?
Yeah, well, I think that most people understand in the Christian world that we have the right to defend ourselves. You know, we're the only free democracy in the Middle East. We're the only country that is founded on Judeo-Christian values. So people who believe in Judeo-Christian values know that Israel has a right to defend himself from a terrible terror organization like Hamas. You have to understand that really the world is divided between those who support Israel and those who support the terror organization Hamas because of October 7th. The atrocities were so terrible, so barbaric. Hamas beheaded children, they burnt families alive, they raped women, they kidnapped Holocaust survivors and took them down to the terror tunnels in Gaza. So anyone who would support that type of behavior is really on the side of bad and evil. And those who stand with Israel are on the side of good. And we know in the Bible it says, woe unto those who see light for dark, dark for light, good for evil, and evil for good. We're seeing that around the world. But people of faith understand what God's promises mean, and that God's promises are an everlasting covenant with the people of Israel, and that we're not occupiers in the land of Israel. We're coming back as God promised us thousands of years ago.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Now, Leo, this is also very much a discussion here in Europe. By the way, we're recording this here in the Hungarian embassy in Vienna, so this is an international prayer gathering where we're together with many politicians, members of parliament, Christian organizations getting together. Within the European Parliament, what are your experiences?
My experiences has been changed. There were European elections not so long time ago, in May. And we see that there is a shift. So there is more members of parliament that are supportive of Israel. What we see in the European Parliament, and what I notice when doing the work there is only one issue, and that is a lack of information. Because there is so much framing in the media, and there is so much fake news spreading around, and the situation is so complicated, there's a lack of information. So as IAF Europe, we started our political information center. So we started to have a whole network of expert organizations, lawyers, think tanks, and to collect the information that is needed, and then to make clear briefings on the topics that are very helpful for politicians. Because I believe that, and what Josh also mentioned, it's so good to see that Christians are able to stand up, but they also need the information, and that is what we see. So my experience in the European Parliament is that there is a much more openness, and when we have this information we share, that is really helpful for the people to understand the situation. So it is still not like what is the majority, so the majorities are formed. So really what we see is that you have, of course, a group who are with us, and then you have a group who are fiercely against it. But there is a whole area, a whole lot of members of European Parliament who actually does not know, and they just follow the media. So there is a big responsibility for us as IAF, but also for the members of Parliament, just to give the good information. And that's also one of the goals, to bring the debate back, because it's very polarized. So by giving details and practical details and objective-based information, we can bring that back. And so I am quite positive about the European Parliament. What the European Commission will do is another story. We see that it is a lot of bias within the European Commission, even after the elections, and that's why the role of members of the European Parliament is even more important. And so I am not negative about the European Parliament. We also have a caucus within the European Parliament. We are sharing information and experiences. Yeah,
Leo, so you're mentioning the lack of information. And I wonder, have you ever experienced situations where legislators said to you, I didn't know that?
Of course, I mean, that happens all the time. You know, legislators have their own political issues that they have to deal with on the local level, in their countries, on the European level. We have this in Africa and Latin America, all over the world. So they get a little bit, you know, a snip here and there about what's happening in Israel. And it's our job to bring the education to them, to let them know, you know, fact-based information about what's really happening on the ground. Because once you understand what's happening in Israel, it's very clear who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. You just need to have that information. Now, of course, politicians, they don't want to look bad when they're being, you know, interviewed on TV. So to have talking points and the ability to make the case for Israel is paramount in the fight of the misinformation war that we're seeing around the world.
Good guys can also make mistakes. Criticism about Israel, about the government, Netanyahu is often in the crosshairs of negative comments.
Look, there are mistakes that are made sometimes, but I think that Israel overwhelmingly has tried to err on the side of caution. You have to understand that despite what you're seeing in the media where they talk about this fake genocide, that this is the most humane urban warfare in the history of mankind. In traditional warfare in urban places like Fallujah, you have about one combatant to 9 civilians. In the Israel battle in Gaza, you have less than 1 civilian to each combatant. Even by the Hamas numbers, which are inflated, it's 1 to 2. People in West Point, the school in the United States that study military battle, are learning about our warfare tactics because it's so targeted. So I think that not only are we not in the wrong in this defensive war that is so needed to stop the terror entity on our border, but we are trying everything, and sometimes we lose soldiers on our side to make it so that there are less civilian casualties. Of course, Hamas uses human shields as well, which makes it even more challenging and more astonishing, the numbers when you actually look at them, how little civilian casualties are. We do more to protect the civilians of Gaza than anyone would ever anticipate. And of course, Hamas is using them as cannon fodder. We just heard from one of the heads of Hamas today saying that 50,000 children are born in Gaza, so we can lose 50,000 people and it means nothing to us. Well, we don't think that. We believe in the sanctity of life, so every life is important to us, and that's why we take such painstaking measures to protect the civilians of Gaza. What's ironic is if you watch the media, you get the exact opposite story. And so you get these stories that are lies, like we bombed a hospital, and then a week later they say, oh, we didn't actually bomb a hospital, but everyone already thinks we did. So there's a lot of misinformation, and that's why getting the right information to our legislators is so important.
Yeah, so, and to get the information to the legislators and to other interested public, you have compiled a lot of information here. Hamas origins, ideology and strategy, you've already mentioned this. Here are different fact-checking papers. Israel hindering humanitarian aid into Gaza. This is on the news right now. There were only 3 trucks allowed into Gaza last week. There was the saying saying that people were starving to death in Gaza due to lacking humanitarian aid. What would you say about that?
Well, first of all, there were 108 trucks that were let in today. No one is starving in Gaza. Because of the incredible amount of humanitarian aid, they had about a 6-month supply when we started our boycott of bringing in humanitarian aid 2 months ago. Now, you have to understand that in Gaza right now, they're holding over 50 hostages, 20 of them confirmed alive in terror tunnels. And what we're saying is, you want the humanitarian aid, release the hostages. We want our women and children back. We want our bodies back. We want our people back. So this isn't just, we decided to cut off the aid willy-nilly, but because the situation has increased to get worse now because of the lack of supplies, even with that and the fact that they hold our hostage, we're still allowing in aid to Gaza because we care so much about the civilian population. Our only stipulation is that it doesn't fall into the hands of Hamas. What was happening before is Hamas was hijacking the humanitarian aid and selling it at a premium to the citizens there, helping to finance their terror war against Israel, and that's something that we can't abide.
There are a few other things concerning politics and borders, Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, Jerusalem, an alternative plan for peace. Perhaps you can say a few words about those contested territories.
Well, that situation, to explain that we'll have a whole long story.
Perhaps just one example.
According to the Oslo Agreement at this moment, Judea and Samaria is divided into 3 areas. Area A, which is complete under Palestinian authority. Even the Jews are not even allowed, Israelis are not allowed even to go by car there. If you go there, you see a big red sign that it's forbidden even to go there. Area B is under a joint authority. So it's under the Palestinian Authority, but also governed by the Israelis. Area C, and that is hereabout, that is the area in the Judea and Samaria, which is complete under Israel authority. The problem is that they are talking about. So the main problems that are discussed are in Area C, but a lot of people don't know exactly about Area C. And they also don't know that there is a lot of Palestinian illegal constructions taking place in Area C. So this briefing paper that will explain a lot, like how is the situation in Judea and Samaria, and how are the authorities and what are the main issues in order to get the understanding of the situation.
So this information can be ordered by your organization?
Yes, anyone who's interested can just contact us and get this information for free. We supply it to anyone who wants to know more about the situation. But just to touch on what Leo said about Judea and Samaria, anyone who reads the Bible knows that Judea and Samaria is part of the land of Israel. Everyone knows that.
I was reading the Bible very intently, and it took a trip to Israel to find out that Samaria and Judea is actually the West Bank in modern terms.
Yes, the reason they call it the West Bank, which is the West Bank of the Jordan River, is to confuse the issue. There are many Christians who are like...
Worked with me.
They worked with a lot of Christians. They said, give them the West Bank. We just want Judea and Samaria. But of course, Jews are called Jews because we're from Judea. That's our land. And any biblical reference. Everyone knows what Shiloh is, everyone knows what Beit El is, everyone knows what Hebron is. These are the foundations of the Jewish civilization. So to say that we're occupying Judea, that Jews are occupying Judea, is really just a misnomer. And so I just want to make the point to understand that just like you were misguided and didn't understand that West Bank was Judea and Samaria, that's the point of why we provide this information. People need to know the maps. It's a very small country. The size of Israel compared to the Arab world, the 22 Arab countries around us, would be like a pack of matches on a football field in terms of landmass. And the idea of Oslo was if we cut our pack of matches in half, we'd have peace. Obviously, that's ridiculous and doesn't make sense. But the fact is that we're back in the land of Israel. God of Israel took us back to the land of Israel to settle the land, and we're here to stay. We're not going anywhere.
Here's another piece of information about UNRWA, the United Nations Refugee Organization, particular for Palestinians. By the way, it's only for the Palestinians. It was created after the War of Independence. There were some discussions in the international press also when it was found out that several of the UNRWA members, staff were involved in the atrocities of the 7th of October. UNRWA receives a lot of money also from the European Union. Isn't that the case? And has something changed here?
Well, the thing that's changed with UNRWA is that Donald Trump is president of the United States and he's defunding UNRWA, and we no longer will cooperate with UNRWA. UNRWA is a terror organization that masks as a humanitarian organization. When our soldiers go into battle in Gaza, we look for the UNRWA sign because we know for sure there'll be weapons and missiles and terrorists hiding there. What happened is that this was a huge Ponzi scheme by the UN where they just armed the Palestinian terrorists through UNRWA. A lot of the employees of UNRWA are Hamas members. And UNRWA, unlike the UNHCR, which is the UN organization for all the refugees around the world except for the Palestinians, receives more money than all the other refugees around the world combined. So what's happening is that they were using the money to buy missiles, get cement factories in there so they can produce terror tunnels. And that's something that we've discovered. We've cut ties with UNRWA. The United States has cut ties with UNRWA. There are European countries who are cutting ties with UNRWA. We hope the world will follow and stop supporting terror. And that's why we put this document out, to document exactly what UNRWA is doing and how they're complicit in funding and supporting terror.
I can add something, because in these briefings we also are looking what the alternatives for UNRWA, because a lot of governments think that UNRWA is indispensable, that it can be replaced, that it's not able to replace. We show in these documents that governments can make a strategy so that the humanitarian aid, for example, can be reassured. And that's also the problem concerning to the humanitarian aid, that problem. Israel is attacked by blocking this humanitarian aid. Well, it was already known about what the problems were with UNRWA and by selling the humanitarian aid on the black market. So instead of attacking Israel, they should say, okay, what can we do to solve it? What kind of structures can we develop so that it's not going into the hands of Hamas, who is selling it on the black market? And that is what we would like to show with our briefings, that there are alternatives for UNRWA, and that is what we should focus on.
Yeah, thank you. It's getting quite noisy here. Our meeting is soon to be started, but just one final question. On the level of the European Parliament, is there more understanding of the real role of UNRWA?
Yes, there is more understanding of the role of UNRWA. A lot of information is spread around. Also, there are other organizations spreading this information, like, for example, the UN Watch, who shows how the staff of UNRWA were involved actually even on the attacks on 7th of October. So it's not only about selling this, but UNRWA is a shadow government of Hamas. So, and that is the problem. That's why Israel and the United States are decided to defund UNRWA. And there is some countries who are deciding it the same, like Sweden and the Netherlands announced it. But it's also our target to see, like, yes, there are alternatives for UNRWA. And if we can show that there are alternatives for UNRWA, then I believe that UNRWA can be easily being dismantled. And that is what we need to see. So we made even a strategic approach on how UNRWA should be defunded and what we can do. So again, we are coming back to the basics, is information that is needed in order to have a debate on these issues instead of attacking Israel, but to have a debate. Okay, this is the problem, how are we going to solve it?
Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Josh. We'll provide more information in the video description, so if you want to find out about the Israel Allies Foundation, check out this, and there will be a follow-up video with the inauguration tomorrow here in Vienna in Austria. Thank you very much.
Thank you.